Welcome to DEIJ Hot Takes. My name is Daryl Sinclair, and this is the podcast where we discover the bold and transformative ideas shaping diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work today. In this episode, we are joined by Tricia Friedman, who is the founder of Ally Ed and the director of learning content and strategy at Shifting Schools. Tricia is a vocal LGBTQ plus advocate and provides resources and services to support equity at schools. Tricia, thank you so much for joining us today. So please share with us the DEIJ hot take that is guiding your work at the moment.
Well, Daryl, first, just thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the provocation. And I feel like you're modeling what we should be doing a little bit more often. And that's like invite the spicy, right? Like, what is your opinion? I'd love to see more of that. In terms of spiciness or boldness, this is something that should be labeled mild, but sometimes when I say it, people are like, whoo, that is like 3 chili peppers. And the thought is, we're talking a lot about generative AI, and we're talking about it as though it exists in this cubbyhole over here and is separate from DEIJ, when all technology is interwoven with our DEIJ work. We have to stop putting things in silos and start seeing synergies. I think it is in the mislabeling of things, as though they're not interconnected, is a huge barrier to progress right now. So that's my hot take.
Well, thank you for that, because at the moment, AI is, of course, such a hot topic, but to see how it can be interconnected with DEIJ work is going to be critical. Could you perhaps take us through what linking DEIJ and AI means, why this is a moderate take, and how it shows up in your work on a daily basis?
I mean, I think it's a moderate take because it's the reality. Like, this is reality. So it should not be spicy, but in terms of how it shows up, multiple ways. One is who we think of when we think of an expert in the generative AI space. I would argue that we really, we can't talk about AI without talking about humanity and society. And that's heavily influenced by the work of Dr. Fei-Fei Li, who is the godmother of AI. And at the same time, Dr. Fei-Fei Li is not a well-known name. She should be. But Dr. Fei-Fei Li talks about how, there's nothing artificial about AI, both in terms of energy, but also ethos. It's designed by us and it's designed to act like us. So when we say, oh, AI is biased, we are biased. Society is biased. And we've got this great, I think, tool to really dig into that and to understand just how deeply ingrained the bias is within our values, our communication. So there's that aspect. And then there's another incredible leader that I'd point everybody to, and that's Dr. Joy Buolamwini, who refers to herself as a poet of code. She's the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League. She's got a great documentary and book called Unmasking AI. Again, in the educational space, I'll bring up her work and people are like, I haven't heard of that. But I think she's modeling this idea of poetry and computer science coming together and to help us really think about what is the future of AI that we want. And she's incredibly invitational in terms of bring your expertise to this. Like, we're going to need a lot of perspectives in helping us really think about our preferred future. So there's the expertise, there's the approach to bettering it. And then there's the very real sort of reality that for folks who might be neurodivergent, I'm neurodivergent. I model a lot of use with AI to set me up to work on executive function, to prepare me for conversations. So the role playing examples and use cases and building of social stories for students, super powerful. We also have organizations like Be My Eyes, which is for folks who have sight impairment or low sightedness, and they're able now to have access in an incredibly new way. But applications like that are not necessarily the stories we hear about in the media, right? And I feel like that's another DEIJ piece, like whose positive use cases are being shared and why aren't we hearing about them?
No, these are brilliant points that you're raising here. I'm hoping people are listening to the idea of, I think it's so foundational, but any bias that is present in AI is something which is present in society, or at least the society and communities whose programming, building, and training that AI, or what that AI is being trained on. In listening to you, I'm hearing a lot of points where we're talking about critically engaging with AI, thinking about what we want it to do, how we want to use it, how we want it to benefit things. So with this kind of groundbreaking technology and application of AI, what would you say for schools and the many areas of the world and schools around the world who may not have as much access to digital equipment and the ability to access AI? Is there any way that they can engage more as well?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question because it's also the need to learn about the technology without engaging it first. I actually would argue is great practice. And maybe the analogy is, like before I drive a car, I'm going to take some lessons and learn about what I'm doing, hopefully I'm actually, behind the wheel, because technology has great power. So let's understand what it's capable of. But to give you a very practical example, I have this, I call it the WISE Media Guide for Generative AI. It's a free resource. I can give you the link. And it's meant to have us just pause. Let's look at kind of the messaging around different generative AI tools. What problem are they purporting to solve? And whose worldview, that's the W in the WISE, like whose worldview has informed it? Let's really just look at the messaging. It's a media literacy and AI literacy activity blended together with also DEIJ, because let's notice who's on the board. If this is a tool that's meant to help teachers, do they have any educators who have been a part of that process or not? One of the tools that I often recommend is called Latimer AI, and this is a large language model that is explicitly designed to value marginalized voices and insight. And then again, it's sort of like there are folks that are like, oh, I've never heard of that one. Huh, why aren't we hearing about that one? And when we try that one out and look at its marketing, its mission, how's that different from some of the other models, right? And who's partnering with them? Paying attention to those things. So again, I think that's critical reading, but it's also getting students thinking about what are the problems that we actually want to solve? Whose problems get prioritized? Who's invited to see themselves as a problem solver? And also the reality that sometimes, we have things marketed towards us. It's not necessarily really a problem, right? So having young folks be a little bit more aware of how things get sold to us and why, and kind of being like more critical consumers.
Oh, yes. And the amount of time that we're engaging with perhaps things on the internet which are inadvertently and often illegally training AI and reproducing those biased systems because the people who are most likely to be using the areas of the internet which are being used to train, and the cycle goes round. Now, there's so much I could continue to ask, but you've raised some brilliant points. I'm hoping there's a lot of inspiration for the listeners. What I would like to ask just at the end, though, is if there was one key takeaway for our listeners. You've already mentioned several resources and books, which I will put into the description. But is there any key reflective questions or consideration that you would give to our listeners just to take away with them as they move forward into their lessons, perhaps tomorrow, or their work across the next weeks?
I think to realize that, sometimes people will say, well, I'm not a techie person, or I don't feel like I'm an expert in this. And a lot of, again, leading experts, folks like Dr. Timnit Gebru say, when it comes to AI, at the moment that we're in, we don't need just the voices of computer scientists. We need folks with, great knowledge in the humanities to be talking about this, because this is not a technology that just, is about the essay. This is a technology that determines who's getting parole and who's not, who's getting shown what real estate opportunities, job opportunities, who's getting jobs. Again, it is already so tightly tied up in our lives. So, for folks who are thinking, I feel intimidated by technology. Ask yourself, that's not your fault. Who's often sold to you in the media as a techie person or as a computer expert? And realize, like, you've probably been influenced by some very biased perspectives around that. And I think also there's a lot to be said about valuing the beginner's mindset, not just in this, but in every single thing. So I would say, like, really lean into the reality. If you're hearing that and you think that's you, your voice really matters right now, and your completely unique perspective, we need to hear that. So start those conversations with folks.
Yeah.
Just join the conversation because we need you.
Yes, thank you. That's such a powerful point to finish on. We need the different voices, the same way our students in class should be informing the learning. Everyone should be able to get involved with this. Thank you. A thoughtful discussion, many powerful points which people can take away. For our listeners, I will place links in the description where you can connect with Tricia and some of the resources and websites that she's mentioned, and for you to explore her ideas and work even further. Thank you for watching or listening, and I will see you on our next episode of DEIJ Hot Takes. Thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you, Daryl.